Hi, I'm Melinda Van Fleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm an author, speaker, and success coach who helps women believe in themselves, build confidence, and take action. In 2009, my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time, and we moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we never even been here. But we made it. And now, not every day is sunshine and rainbows, but we're living our best lives. All along in our journey, I've always said that someday when we get our shit together, we will help others. So each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you? Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited. I have an amazing special guest today. Her name is Bella Luna. And Bella is a spiritual life coach, healer, and mystic. She works with heart-centered, soulful women who lack purpose, are disenchanted with the world around them, and have found themselves swimming in a sea of darkness. And Bella and I connected, this is what's so cool, through Joanna Hunter's groups, because we both have taken courses from Joanna Hunter, and I had Joanna on this podcast back in November. So I love connecting with high vibe, positive women, and oh my gosh, I just had the chills just thinking about this. So I had reached out to Bella and she said yes. And she has so many awesome insights and mystical things to talk to us about this morning. And we're just going to have a magical podcast. So welcome, Bella.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I feel like we have so much to cover. So because we've been emailing back and forth and you just have so many amazing things that you share with your audience. So let's just start with you telling a little bit about your background and then we'll kind of go from there.
Oh gosh, where to start? Going back right to the beginning, I had a magical fairy tale childhood. You know, I grew up frolicking in the woods, playing with fairies in the garden and mixing magical potions from mud and leaves and herbs and stuff. So it's no wonder that I ended up following this journey. But then, like so many, went through so many challenges through adolescence and early adulthood, mental health problems and various dark nights of the soul. And that really led me onto this path of really discovering who I was and what the meaning of all of this was on earth. You know, why are we here? What am I doing? What's my purpose? And that led me on this journey of self-love and self-discovery. And I really wanted to give back to people and to help them on their journey as well. I think after a lot of counseling and therapy as a teenager, and people are so stuck in the past of counseling and therapy, I really wanted to do something that was based on the present and the future. So that's the basis of my coaching practice. And a lot of my studies in education came from the sciences. So people are quite surprised to hear that I also consider myself a scientist as well as a mystic. But at university, I studied a Bachelor of Science in wildlife conservation. So it was heavily based on the environment and animals. And I used that to bring a really grounded approach to my coaching practice, because I think a lot of spiritual teachings can be taught in quite an inaccessible way, a bit fluffy, maybe even a bit pretentious, and sometimes hard to really understand how they relate to your everyday life. So I pride myself on really bringing that grounded, accessible approach to the spiritual teachings. And within my practice, I also use a lot of different tools, such as the moon, such as chakras, and anything to do with the elements or nature or crystals or incense and all of those kind of things. So that's a little bit about me and how I came to create this business in the first place.
Wow. Now, since you mentioned the moon, let's dive into that first as a topic because I have grown to become fascinated by the moon. And I would say it's probably been a couple years now. I first got, I guess, introduced to the moon by going to a full moon ceremony that this couple used to have here in the Keys. And it was just such an amazing experience. And now I feel like whenever there's a full moon, I put my crystals outside, but that's really all I know. So I would love for you to kind of give like moon for dummies, like what's kind of like a moon 101 lesson for people.
Okay, so the moon, surprisingly, is actually a really good time management tool. You heard me right, time management. Okay, so people are a bit like, what are you talking about, the moon and time management, you know, and spiritual stuff and time management as well. People get a bit confused. But so the moon phase has 8 different phases, which can be narrowed down to 4 different points, but also can be narrowed down into 2 different phases. So we've got the waxing and the waning phase. So the waxing is as it's growing, as it's building from the new moon to the full moon. And the waning is as it's decreasing in size between the full moon and the new moon. And that really is a representation of the ebb and flow of life. A little bit like the seasons that we experience, particularly in the extremes of the hemispheres when we have really quite 4 seasons. You tend to slow down during the winter, you tend to sleep more, you tend to just move slower and have less pressure on yourself to do things. Whereas in summer, you suddenly get really energized, you want to do everything, you sleep less and you play more. And that's exactly the same with the different phases of the moon. So as we are waxing, as we are increasing in size, we are also increasing in energy and increasing in momentum that we can use to fuel our actions, to fuel our goals, to fuel our dreams. And then as we're waning and we're decreasing in the size of the moon, it's an indication to start slowing down, to beginning to rest more, to beginning to take a step back from really manic life. And that's a really simple, the very first step of understanding the cycles is that ebb and flow. And when we go against that ebb and flow, that's when we start to not really be able to achieve the things we're trying to achieve. So if we're in the waning crescent phase of the moon, which is the last phase before we head back round to the new moon, that is the phase for resting and restoring and relaxing. And if we spend that phase of the moon trying to take massive action, which is what you're supposed to do in the first quarter of the moon, if we try and take massive action in the waning crescent, we're not going to get very far because we're too tired. So we're fighting against the natural rhythms of the planet. So by aligning with the moon, you use the natural energy from the planet to fuel your lifestyle and to fuel your goals and your dreams and to help you manage your time in a more effective and efficient way. So it's really it's just the nature's way of Mother Earth's way of going, here is a time management tool, do with it as you will. And we've just decided to ignore it for centuries.
I'm like so flabbergasted right now. Oh my God. Okay. I'm just going to be quiet. You can go. Wow. I hope that everyone like listening is like as dazzled as I am. I had no idea about any of this. So go on. Wow.
Yeah. So I discovered this whilst I was at university doing my undergraduate dissertation. I was studying wildlife conservation, as I previously mentioned, and we went on a field trip, a research trip to the Peruvian Amazon. And I lived in the Peruvian Amazon for 6 weeks on a research boat. And I decided to undertake my research on bats. And, you know, being a weird, witchy, mystical person, I wanted to choose the most mystical creature I could find. Everyone else was doing frogs and monkeys and caiman. And I was like, I'm going to study bats. Everyone thought I was mad, but I loved it. Best 6 weeks of my life. And one of the statistical interpretations I did was I collected my research on how many numbers of bats I observed and captured each night. And I assessed that against the phase of the moon. And what I noticed was that the less of the moon that was visible, the more bats were out, because there was less light and they don't like the light. So there was no bats out at the full moon, which is contradictory to popular culture with all those images of bats flying over the full moon.
Which just flashed across my brain. That's so amazing.
Exactly. So that was funny. So I noticed this correlation basically between the phase of the moon and the activity of the bats. And that was when I really sort of caught, the attention. The moon caught my attention, and I was like, wow, this is having such a profound effect on the activity of the bats without, it wasn't me just making up the statistics. They were direct correlations. And I even have some graphs I have a blog about it, and some graphs that show the correlation, and it's so undeniable. And this was what really sort of got me interested in the moon. So this is a good, 10 years ago now. And I was like, I wonder if the moon then has an effect on us and our activity levels. So I made the intention to start noticing my own life. And it wasn't long before I realized that it was around sort of the full moon, just before, just after, that I had so much energy. And I was like, let's party, let's go out, let's have fun, let's play, let's be mischievous and, run rampant around life and just see what shenanigans we can get up to. And then I noticed around the new moon time, I was a lot more tired and I wanted to rest more. And my life went a lot more smoothly when I started aligning myself with these natural rhythms. And the different moon phases, so there's 8 moon phases that all have a different activity to them or intention to them. And it really encourages you to do things in your life that you maybe wouldn't normally do or that you struggle to do. So I'll just briefly run through them in order so that you get a sense of it.
Yeah.
But there is a free download guide on my website if you want a 1-page, simple guide to remember these by.
And I have that in front of me. So I highly recommend everyone to, if you can do it now, or go ahead and get her download, her freebie, and then circle back to this podcast, because I actually have it in front of me. So go ahead.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
So we start off with the new moon, which is when we have the least amount of the moon visible to us from Earth. So one thing I like to point out is that the moon is only visible to us because it reflects the light of the sun, right? So that's the only reason that we can see the moon, is because the sun's light is reflecting off the surface of the moon and then traveling back down to Earth. So it's actually the sunlight that we're seeing when we look at the moon. And because of that reflection, that means that the whole moon's phases are all about reflecting, really. The moon, in one word, is about reflection. So we start off with the new moon, which is the least amount of the moon visible. As many of you might already know or might have heard in various spiritual circles, the new moon is for setting intentions and planting those seeds of intentions, right? So think about the goals and the things you want to have achieved by the end of this moon cycle. And they can be super practical things like, I want to earn X amount of money or lose X amount of weight, or they can be more energetic, like I'd like to deepen my sense of self-love or deepen my gratitude practice or something more energetic like that. So we set the intentions at the new moon. Then the next phase is the waxing crescent. And this is when we have sort of a really crescent-shaped slither of moon visible. And this is the time for planning, cultivating, a time to really get curious about how you can bring these intentions about. And planning is really important to the manifesting part. It's part of the sort of law of attraction that people miss out often, is that the more specific a plan you make, the more likely you are to achieve it. So if you get really specific in terms of what exactly are you going to do, when exactly are you going to do it, how exactly are you going to do it, and is there anyone that could help you, even if that's just a specific part of yourself that you're going to call upon, or you could outsource it or pay someone. But plan is the second phase, the waxing crescent. So then we move on to the first quarter, which is the time for taking massive action. So the moon's really building up by this phase, and we're really riding on the momentum that this increasing of the visibility. So we're taking massive action and we're carrying out our plan. So this is the time to really be brave and be bold and actually get out there and start doing all of the things. There's no more planning. That time has gone. We're now in action. Then the fourth phase is the waxing gibbous. And this is a time for improvements. So we reflect on all of the action steps we took and we see, how did they go? Could I have done it any better? Is there anything that I can add? Is there anything that I can take away? Is there any way that I can make this more powerful, more enjoyable, more successful, more simple or easy? And then we come round to the full moon. And the full moon is really a time for celebration and engaging in the world around you, engaging in your senses and healing. So celebrating is something that we often forget to do in life. We're really good at celebrating people around us, but we're really terrible at celebrating ourselves. Okay. So the full moon provides an opportunity for you to remember, what have I achieved in the last couple of weeks? What have I achieved since my intentions were set that I can really celebrate? And it's important to celebrate the progress and not just the goals achieved, because the progress is obviously is sometimes a lot easier to see than the actual milestones that we've hit. And then as it begins to wane and it begins to decrease, we get the waning gibbous, which is a time for sharing and teaching. So everything that you've learned over the last few phases of the moon, it's time to discuss it with people around you, share your findings, teach people what, the insights that you've discovered. And that helps to deepen your understanding of the whole process yourself. Yeah. Then there's the last quarter, which is the time to surrender and release. So we're beginning to slow down a lot here, and we're surrendering to the highest good for all, and we're releasing that which no longer serves us. And that can come in so many different forms, surrender and release. So that's like a whole topic in and of itself. And then there's the waning crescent, which is the resting and restorative phase before we head back round to the new moon. So that's how the whole 8 phases work out. And you can see how they could help structure your month on when you might do the planning for your month, when you might take all the action for your month, when you might launch your course or start your gym membership or sign up to that dating app or whatever it is that you're going to do. You can plan it according to the moon phases and jump on the energetic bandwagon that the earth is providing you.
Oh my God, this is fascinating, above and beyond. And you just did an amazing job too of explaining this. So freaking kudos. So where are we? So today is April 20th, right?
April 20th. Yeah.
Right? 20th. Okay. So today, where are we today? Because next full moon.
We're on the first quarter today. So that is the taking massive action time.
Oh, and we're doing a podcast today.
And we are doing a podcast. So it's perfect time. Okay. And the good thing about the moon is that there's a few days for each phase. Mm-hmm. So you have a few days to take those massive action steps. I remember, so I have a course called Moon Mentor, which is available to purchase. It's only 2.5 hours worth of videos. So it's really quick to get into. But when I sat down to record this course, I intended to do the recording on this phase, on the first quarter, because that was the taking the massive action. And builders decided to start work right outside my bedroom window on that morning. I was due to start recording. And I was furious. I was how dare you interrupt me in my moon alignment? I've only got a few days to get these recordings done.
They were taking massive action too.
They were, yes, quite. So I just, I was you know what, chill out. It's all good. I'll just do what other action steps can I take to make this an even better experience once I do start recording? And it's about 4 days for each phase, give or take. So a day and a half, 2 days, they were doing the building work, and then I could record, and it was all good. It was all fine. But that's why it's nice to have those few days leeway, so that if you are busy or if things come up that you're not expecting, then you can just chill out and know that it's all good, and there'll be time to do it later on.
Yeah, that makes sense too with like, let's say I'm just making this up as an example, get an email or something that's disturbing or causes you some stress or anxiety or you don't feel good about. If you walk away, right, and just kind of leave it simmer, can you see how that might play out with balancing with the moon?
Well, I don't necessarily know about the moon, but I think that's a great practice to do just anyway. It's good to allow something to sort of sink in and not necessarily to react to it straight away, particularly when it's a negative thing or something that heightens your emotions, because it's nice to get that reflective time. So in that sense, you can relate it back to the moon. And then, if you are big in, if you do want to really get into this moon cycle stuff, then you can always, in situations like that, check the phase of the moon. And that might help you come to a decision about how you want to react. Do you want to take more time to rest and reflect on it? Or do you want to take massive action towards it, depending on the phase of the moon and depending on you as well, and your personality?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you have a course next week, right? That comes out, I think, on Monday. Am I wrong? You tell me if I've got this wrong.
Yes, yeah, I have a course starting on Monday called Awaken Your Inner Mystic.
Okay. And did you plan it then according to the cycle here with your launch?
Not always, not always. Sometimes there are so many other things to plan, but this one does start on the full moon, on the very first day of the full moon, because that's a super mystical time, and I thought that would be a good idea. But also there are a few other factors in my life that were playing a part in, so you have to take everything into consideration as well, obviously. A holistic approach. Holistic.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because, and I was talking to somebody the other day and she didn't tell me which personality assessment, and there's so many out there, but let's say it was like a Myers-Briggs or something. And she was using it so literal. And I was like, no, you have to kind of, merge lots of different learnings together. You know what I mean? So they're guidance, but yeah, you can't like always fully operate under one specific thing. So I get what you're saying. Well, this is absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, I hope we'll put the information for the chart, and she has this all laid out too on this. And I love when things are just like one piece of paper. So I love that you did that. We'll put the information in the show notes. It's really cool that you shared this. Thank you so much. So I also want to dive into a discussion about higher self. I do believe there is a lot out there on the internet and a lot of different messages and not really always a lot of clarity. And if someone is just awakening to a lot of these amazing spiritual practices and teachings, they might be a little confused on what that means. And I know you had a training in early April, I think it was April 1st, and unfortunately I missed it. So I would love for you to kind of maybe give us a Cliff Note version of what it's like to work on connecting to your higher self. What are some tips and ideas? And just overall kind of share with the audience.
Well, I think that leads really nicely on for what you were just saying about the taking on guidance and advice literally, because the only guidance and advice that I would ever consider taking on literally would be the guidance I received from my higher self, because that is the part of me. So your higher self is the part of you that is pure source energy, that's pure divine, that's pure divine cosmic essence, right? It's the part of you that isn't human. Your human is the vessel, and then your higher self is the soul and the part of you that is still connected to the cosmos, the universe, and everything that is magic. And like you were saying, there is so much information out there in the spiritual world. A lot of it has its place. Some of it's a load of crap, and some of it is, maybe some people trying to take advantage. So we have to be open and aware of that.
Yes.
But the one place that if you manage to tune into, the one place that won't ever let you down is your higher self. That is the place that you can rely on for the truth, the hard truth, nothing but the truth. And sometimes it's, it's not always what you want to hear. Sometimes it's what you already know. And sometimes it's completely out of the blue and you're like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's the place that, it will never let you down. And for me, my spiritual journey began with about 3 years of pure experience, right? So it was 3 years before I ever picked up a book, before I ever Googled anything to do, I call it Guru Google, before I ever turned to Guru Google about any of these spiritual concepts, before I ever listened to any TED Talks or any podcasts. Everything was what I taught myself, what nature taught me, what my higher self taught me, and some philosophical discussions with some of my close friends that were going through spiritual awakenings as well. So what that did for me is it really helped me create this foundation of this unshakable foundation of experience and answers in a belief system created from the universe itself, from my higher self, from nature, from Mother Earth, from any beings that I met along the way, spirit guides, spirit animals, all of those types of things. And therefore, when I did enter the quote unquote real world, the outside spiritual world, and I started listening to TED Talks and podcasts and gurus and Googling things and talking to other people, it was then really easy for me to go, that's a load of bullshit. No, that doesn't resonate with me. Oh, that I already found that out myself. And that's fascinating that you're saying the exact same thing that my higher self told me. That must be right then, because if I'm receiving the same message from multiple sources, it's sort of, it layers the proof up for you to then, deepen your belief in that. So, and I don't call it connecting to your higher self. I like to call it reconnecting to your higher self, because it really is a reconnection with a part of you that is the original essence of you. That was there before your human meat sack was ever around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think reconnecting with your higher self is one of the most valuable spiritual tools I would ever recommend or suggest that people develop, because it helps you to stand in integrity and to discern what resonates with you and what is right for you. It helps you avoid brainwashing. It helps you avoid cults. It helps you avoid being taken advantage of. And it also might help you spending thousands and thousands of dollars on psychics or people that are telling you all this information that you could access inside yourself. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
it does for me. I really appreciate that. It's actually been part of my journey because I'm 50. So when I started going through my spiritual journey, that was way before the internet, right? So I was having all these thoughts and all these things happening and really kind of developing my own basis of understanding without any outside influence, right? So then along comes the internet and all this stuff, good and bad, like what you're saying, I agree with. And for me, it then got, I would say two different things. Number one, half became validation, where I was like, oh, okay, I have those thoughts too, or I believe that too, or I've experienced that too. And okay, I'm not crazy, or that makes sense, just kind of connected dots. And then on the other side of it was going, oh, well, have I been thinking of this wrong? Am I a bad person or whatever, right? So I had to really learn to discern, what's my higher self and the route that the path I should keep on, and what's another human telling me how I should think, feel, behave, what I should take action on, all those things. Because being that it happened to me at that certain stage, it did become a little noisy. So I someone I talked to who's been a great guidance for me, that's when she said, she's like, stop listening to humans. And she said humans. She's like, you are a spiritual being. You have an innate knowing. You're highly intuitive. Like, keep going. Like you're fine. Like you just, keep doing, let your intuition guide you, which is, part of the reason why we're talking together today. Right. So, so it is fascinating, and I'm not saying anything bad. Obviously, I mean, I'm a podcaster, so I'm not saying anything bad about listening to podcasts, because I hope you're listening to this one. But I do believe there's a way where you have to still try to keep your mind clear of, so your higher self can come through and you can hear it. And that's the guidance that you should be listening to at the end of the day. So, yeah. So what are some tips for people if they're like, I still don't know what you're talking about. What should I do? Where's, maybe a little bit of action for some people so they can kind of start on this journey to reconnect.
So reconnecting with your higher self is about turning your focus inwards instead of outwards. So taking your focus from finding answers externally and then turning your perspective inwards to finding answers inside. And to connect with your internal being, you need to be more and do less. You also need to spend time in silence, spend a lot of time in silence, walking in nature, meditating, but silently, not necessarily to music or to guided meditations, which have their place. I love a visualization, but spending time in silence really makes space for your higher self to come in. But I do have 6 steps. I do have a sort of a mini formula of 6 steps that I teach people, that I share with people, that I have used myself, and I'll just briefly run through them to give you a little mini formula to go away with.
Perfect.
So step 1 is perspective. So you need to look internally, not externally, for your answers. You need to go inwards in order to go upwards towards that cosmic connection. It's about zooming out and becoming the observer in order to gain perspective, because a change in perspective can honestly change your entire world. It's the difference between seeing the glass half full and the glass half empty, right? So there's some exercises that I have done that really change people's perspective from things. Like if you are rating your life out of 10, right? So how far away from 10 out of 10 do you feel? So you might feel like, oh, I feel really far away from having a 10 out of 10 life. I feel like I'm at a 4 because I'm really not hitting my dreams. My goals feel so far away. Everything's, like a shit heap or whatever. But then if I was to say to you, how far away from 0 do you feel? You might suddenly not feel like you're 4 away from 0. If 0 is no money, you're really ill, you have no one in your life, no one loves you, you're terrible at everything, you're living on the streets, you have no food, no water, no shelter, no talents, no gifts, no skills, everything is as worse as it could be. Suddenly you feel like you're at an 8 out of 10. So a change in perspective can really change everything. And zooming out of your human body, zooming up into the universe, into that cosmic realm, that can often help us gain what I call I don't call it, scientists call it a macro perspective, as opposed to the micro perspective that we live within the human body. So the human self has a micro perspective with 5 senses, and the higher self has a macro perspective with infinite perspectives of everything that was, everything that is, and everything that will be. So step 1 is perspective. Step 2 is detachment. So detachment means being detached from outcome, detached from the results taken by your actions. And by remaining detached, it helps you to avoid disappointment. And so if you attach to an outcome, when you don't reach that outcome, you then get disappointed. And disappointment is a real low vibrational frequency. So one of the main goals in life is to keep your vibes high, right? You want to be happy and joyful, but disappointment really brings your vibes down. So remaining attached helps to keep your vibes high. And when you remain detached, you can make space for all of the different possibilities that might be even better than being attached to that one particular outcome. Because as soon as you're attached, you've cut yourself off from anything better than that.
Yes.
So that's step 2, detachment. Okay. Step 3 is surrender. So by that, I mean surrendering to the highest good for all, surrendering to the divine, giving yourself over to a higher power, having faith, having trust. And, it doesn't matter what name you call it, God, goddess, spirit, divine, source. It doesn't matter. It's all that same, higher power. And by surrendering to the divine, by surrendering to that higher power, it allows for infinite possibilities, for magic and wonders that your mind doesn't even realize are possible, right? So that's why we surrender. And then step 4 is to release. So release that which no longer serves you. And these 2 steps 3 and 4, are surrender and release, and they're part of the last quarter of the moon phase. So that's the best time to do any surrender and release practices. And for release, it's about releasing that which no longer serves you, releasing control, releasing fear, releasing negative emotions. It could be releasing objects, possessions, releasing commitments, releasing habits, releasing vows you've made to people, and commitments or bad habits, things like that. Step 5 is remembrance. So that's about remembering that you are a pure, powerful being. You are pure source essence. And it's really easy to forget that when you're in your human body. So remembering that and returning to this state of purity can really help to reconnect you with your higher self. So it's remembering who you are underneath all the layers of humanity, all the layers of ego, all the layers of negative, low vibrational frequencies. To remember the essence of the divine, of pure, unconditional love. And then the 6th step is a bit of a half step. It's a bit of a cheat of a step, but it's also the umbrella step, which is embodiment. So there's no point in learning all of these steps if you're not going to actually put them into practice and implement them in your everyday life. So it's about step 6 is about taking all of those five initial steps: perspective, detachment, surrender, release, and remembrance, and really embodying them and bringing them back into your human state and using them as tools to reconnect with your higher self and gain that wisdom and that connection that you get from the cosmos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's amazing. And you're so right about the embodiment, because that's actually where so many people, they stop. They'll listen to this podcast. They'll go, "Oh, these steps are great," and then they don't really embody it and make it part of their life and their journey. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. I have a question in regards to number 2 with detachment. So, and that is, how would you help somebody that is very goal oriented? And then you have, again, circling back to what's going out there in social media, all these coaches and everyone going, you have to have your goals, and what are your goals? And, all that noise that we hear. So what would be like a way to help somebody that maybe understands the need to detach, but then they have the goal noise going on too? Like, what's a good balance? How could you help them?
So you're right in using the word balance. It is such a balance, like so many things in life. You have to have a goal, because if there's no goal, then there's no law of attraction in play, right? So without a goal, you're not aiming for anything. So you're wandering around aimlessly and you're never going to get anywhere. So you need the goal in order to have the anchor point to aim towards. So the goal is very important. But the goal needs to be this goal and anything better. This goal and anything that's for the highest good for all. And I think what it really comes down to is trust, right? It's trusting that the universe knows what it's doing. It's trusting that the universe has everyone's best interests at heart. And if that doesn't happen, it's because there's something else that is supposed to happen. And whether that replacement thing is seen, from a human viewpoint as negative or positive, the point is that the universe only provides what you need, and what you need for your spiritual evolution and growth as a human and a spiritual being. So it really comes down to trust, and to trust that if you do a big launch and you only get one person in your course, it's trusting that is because that one person is supposed to get all of your attention, and that one person is supposed to have a one-on-one experience with you, and that's how it's supposed to be. And you need to trust in that. So, and trust is a really hard thing. Trust is a super hard thing for even, the most enlightened of us. So does that make sense? It may not have been what you wanted to hear.
No, it really does. And I think that if anyone listening, if you're like me, let's say, for example, and you're Alpha, you're a generator, you're an Aries, I've got all the things, right, Bella? So that is my issue, right? So I wanted to hear what you would say to help others out there, because that is always been my issue. I mean, this goes way back, right? I'm great at doing the goals, and detachment is something I've had to work on over the years. And that's the work. Like, I have to remind myself, I have to embody that, because it's just not a natural part of how I'm wired. So I don't think I'm alone. So I hope that this helps someone else out there that may be struggling with, getting the pieces to mesh as best as possible. So I appreciate that explanation. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is such an amazing podcast. Oh my God, I hope people listen to it like 3 times so it sinks into their brain and like sinks into their subconscious, and they embody it. Step 6, embodiment, which is so true, and definitely, again, where a lot of people fall short. They think they're doing all the things, but then they don't embody it and make it really part of their life, part of their being, and therefore see the real change. So thank you. I love this.
You're most welcome.
Is there anything else you would love to share with the audience before we wrap up? And then I definitely want you to share about your course and how everyone can reach out to you.
Yeah. So one thing that I cannot speak to anyone without dropping in a bit of self-love, right? So self-love for me is the foundation of everything that is worth doing and living and being in this world. Okay. So I call self-love the gift that keeps on giving, because once you establish a good foundation of self-love, everything in your life will grow and thrive from that one seed of having a really good sense of self-love. That is where everything good comes from, everything grows from, and pretty much everything that might be challenging in your life is likely to be stemming from a lack of self-love and a lack of self-worth. And I just like to make sure that is weaved into everything that I teach, everything that I deliver, because I think it's the important first step on anyone's journey to living a better life.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that more and more people are awakening to that, or trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? If they've been beaten down, they're like, okay, I need to start working on myself. And this could be a whole other podcast, Bella.
Absolutely.
Because it's so important. It's such an important topic. And I even find that people may think they have it, and then they start, talking or doing like a deeper dive, and there's still some piece of them that they weren't fully loving. And that's where the work is too. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It's beautiful. Yeah. And I'm going to bring this up because you mentioned it in when we were talking before the podcast. You have an amazing quote that you like to say that's yours.
Yeah. So one of the sort of phrases or sayings that I like to live by is, make the journey as magical as the destination.
Mm.
And for me, that's really important because after spending so many years in a really, really dark place, I would constantly say things to myself like, I will be happy when. I will be happy when I have a good job. I will be happy when I have some good friends. I will be happy when I lose a bit of weight. I will be happy when, fill in your blank, right?
Yes.
I will be happy when X, Y, and Z happens, when I've achieved all of my goals. And one day I was like, no, I want to be happy now. I don't want to be happy one day. I want to be happy now. So then a lot of my journey became about how can I make every day and how can I make the journey joyful, fun, playful, and all of the good things in life instead of waiting for me to achieve all of my goals and my dreams. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's a really easy one to slip into. I'll feel like a success. I'll love myself when I feel like a success, when I've made X amount of money, or when I've got X number of people into my program or into my coaching package or on my mailing list or followers on Instagram. You put all your self-worth on these numbers, on these milestones, instead of just doing what brings you joy on a daily basis. And when I had this realization, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, why have I not been doing this all along? It was like one of the best revelations I'd ever had. And so I put that quote everywhere. I think it's on my website in several places and, in all of my graphics and memes and whatever, because I want to get across to people that the journey is the goal, right? The life is the journey, so the goal, the destination is actually death, right? It's death and going back to whatever you believe in, returning back to the pure source essence of it all. So your whole life is a journey and you want to enjoy every step of it instead of just enjoying the milestones, which I don't know about you, but quite often when I hit a milestone, I'm not even that happy about it. So because you've already started to calibrate for the next milestone. So that milestone is like, it's about time I've reached that one. And you're already looking at the next one. So you might as well enjoy the space in between. Otherwise, what's the damn point?
Right. And all of this definitely correlates and ties back to your 6 steps of, reconnecting to your higher self, because recognizing that it's a journey and enjoying it along the way. If you have that, then that aligns with, perspective and detachment and surrender and release and remembering and embodiment. It does all mesh together so beautifully.
Yeah, some real juicy stuff here.
Yeah, it is. It's really just amazing. So I hope that, everyone out there is really going, wow, and here and seeing the little dots connect and the wheels turning. and again, like, you can listen to all the noise out there that has you focused on goals and how many email subscribers you're going to have and all the things. But if you're not enjoying the journey along the way and recognizing it for what it is and appreciating it and embodying it, then you get to this place of disappointment, which doesn't help you at all.
Yeah. So. And that's why I like the full moon, is because it's a monthly reminder to celebrate, to have fun, to play, to engage, to have a party or dance to some cool music or whatever it is that celebration is to you, whether or not you've hit a large milestone or not. Just celebrate the journey. And that's one of the things I love about the moon phases, is that if you're following them, then it's a constant reminder of bringing these energies into your life. And sometimes we really have to work hard to remember to rest or play or celebrate. And by following the moon, you're almost like forced into it. You're held accountable.
Yeah. And like you said in the beginning, it's time management system.
Yeah. It's really bizarre.
Because I did have that little head scratch when you said that. I was like, oh, it's going to be like interesting. But yeah, like it totally is. It totally makes sense when you explained it and walked through it. It is a time management system, which is brilliant. I love it. Very, very cool. So how can everyone get hold of you? Because they should. So.
Because they should, yes. So I'm often around my Facebook group. I have a free private Facebook group that is full of mystical, magical content, and I can easily be found in there. It doesn't have one of those cool / names to it. It's just a bunch of numbers, so I can't verbalize it on the podcast, but we can put a link to it somewhere. Otherwise, my website is www.bella-luna.org, and that's where you can get access to the free Moonmentum one-page guide, the download. And then you can just print it off and pop it somewhere visible and help you to really remember the different phases. And then I would definitely recommend getting an app that tells you the phases of the moon. Otherwise, you'll have to Google it every few days, and that might get a bit tedious. So,
thank you. Which app do you have, by the way? Would you recommend one?
The app I use, let me just check what it's called.
Okay. I was going to ask you, and then I'm like, oh, she probably going to think I'm stupid that I can't count on the calendar. Like, that's what I thought.
Well, no, because it changes. It doesn't have, like, you know, if the full moon is 3 days this month, it might be 4 days next month. It doesn't have, so you need an app, really.
Oh, good. Thank you.
You can't just, I mean, you can go out and look at the moon and hazard a guess, but when it's on the cusp of 2 phases, then you might get it wrong. So it's nice to have an app. I don't know what this app's called. It just says moon.
Okay,
it's not very useful.
I'll see what I can find and then put it in the show notes too, if anyone's like me going, okay, yeah, let's just keep this simple. I love that.
Yeah, but there's loads of free ones, and I just have it to check the phase. I don't. Yeah. I'm sure there are fancy ones that have more to it than that. Or a diary. I've also had several moon diaries that tell you the phases on each day of your diary, so they can be quite useful if you like. If you're a paper person or a digi person, you can pick your tool. So my Facebook group, my website. I also have a couple of blogs on the moon cycle on my website, particularly about the my research in the Amazon. If anyone's a bit of a nerd and wants to check that out.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, my handle is Bella Luna Mystic, so I can be found on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Well, this was an amazing podcast, and I am over the moon excited, unintended, that you were able to chat with me, and energetically, I'm just like so happy. Thank you. The best. I appreciate it.
You are so welcome, and I'm so happy to be here and to just talk about this spiritual stuff to an audience of people that might care, and to spread the message, and to talk to you and you know, connect with your energy as well. It's been lovely. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.